The jump. Grace Bennett was drowning in the Thames when billionaire CEO Alexander Sterling dove in after her. She jumped to escape her abusive fiancé, expecting to die. But Alexander pulled her to shore, looked into her terrified eyes, and whispered 5 words that changed everything. "Marry me for 1 year." What she did next shocked everyone. Before we begin, write in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy watching. The rain hammers Westminster Bridge like bullets against glass. Grace Bennett stands at the edge, her white wedding dress torn and stained with mud and blood. The Thames churns black beneath her bare feet. Her hands shake as she grips the stone railing. The engagement ring on her finger catches the streetlight, a reminder of the nightmare she just escaped. "Grace!" She spins around. Marcus Whitmore storms toward her, his expensive suit soaked through. Her fiancé's face is twisted with rage, a bruise forming on his jaw where she hit him with the champagne bottle. "Get away from me," Grace whispers. "You embarrassed me in front of 300 people?" Marcus grabs her wrist, his fingers digging into her skin. "Do you have any idea what this will cost me?" Grace tries to pull away, but his grip tightens. "Marcus, please." "Please? You run out on our wedding, destroy my reputation, and now you say please?" He yanks her toward him. Grace stumbles, her bare feet slipping on the wet stone. "Let go of me!" "Not until you come home and fix this mess. We're going back to that church, and you're going to marry me." "I'd rather die than marry you." Marcus's eyes go dark. "That can be arranged." Grace's blood turns to ice. She sees the same look he had when he hit her in the vestry, when he told her exactly what would happen if she ever tried to leave him. With a surge of desperate strength, Grace breaks free. Marcus lunges for her, but she's already climbing over the railing. "Grace, no!" She doesn't look back. The wind whips her hair as she stands on the narrow ledge, her heart pounding so hard she can feel it in her throat. Below, the Thames waits like a hungry mouth. "If you jump, I'll find you," Marcus calls out. "Even if you survive, I'll make sure you regret it." Grace closes her eyes. Better to die free than live as his prisoner. She jumps. The fall lasts forever and no time at all. The water hits her like a concrete wall, driving the breath from her lungs. The wedding dress wraps around her legs like chains, pulling her down into the darkness. She doesn't fight it. This is what she wanted: to disappear, to escape, to finally be free. But something grabs her arm. Strong hands pull her upward, toward the surface. Grace breaks through with a gasp, coughing up river water. "I've got you," a man's voice says. "Stay calm." Grace can barely see through the water streaming down her face. A stranger swims beside her, one arm around her waist as he kicks toward shore. His dark hair is plastered to his head, his expensive suit ruined. "Why?" she chokes out. "Because no one deserves to die alone." He pulls her to the embankment where his driver waits with blankets. The man who saved her is tall and broad-shouldered, with gray eyes that seem to see everything. He looks like he stepped out of a magazine, too perfect to be real. "Call the ambulance," he tells his driver. "No hospitals," Grace whispers. "Marcus will find me." The stranger studies her face, the bruise on her cheek, the fear in her eyes. "What's your name?" "Grace Bennett." "I'm Alexander Sterling, and you're safe now." The ambulance arrives within minutes. Grace tries to refuse treatment, but Alexander climbs into the ambulance with her. "I'm her husband," he tells the paramedic. "What?" Grace stares at him. "Trust me," he murmurs, squeezing her hand. At the hospital, Alexander never leaves her side. He tells the doctor she hit her head when she fell from his yacht. "An accident," he says, "nothing more." She's in shock,
the doctor explains. "We'll keep her overnight for observation." When they're alone, Grace grabs Alexander's sleeve. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I know what it's like to feel trapped." His voice is gentle, but there's steel underneath. Grace realizes this man is dangerous in a completely different way than Marcus. "I don't even know you." "Sometimes strangers are the only ones who can save us." Alexander pulls out his phone and makes a call. "Davis, I need you to handle something." "No, she's not a client. She's my wife." "What?" Grace's eyes widen. "What are you doing?" "Buying you time. When you're ready to tell me who hurt you, I'll make sure they never hurt you again." The sedative the nurse gave her starts to take effect. Her eyelids grow heavy. "I can't pay you back." "We'll discuss terms when you're better." Grace wants to ask what he means, but sleep pulls her under. When she wakes up, morning light streams through the hospital window. Her head feels clearer, but her body aches like she's been hit by a truck. She lifts her left hand and freezes. A wedding ring gleams on her finger. White gold with a simple diamond. It's beautiful, elegant, and completely unfamiliar. With shaking fingers, Grace reaches for the nightstand. There's a marriage certificate with her name on it, and his, Alexander Sterling. The date is yesterday. The door opens, and Alexander walks in carrying coffee and pastries. He's changed into a fresh suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. He looks like a man who owns the world. "Good morning, Mrs. Sterling." Grace holds up the certificate. "What is this?" "Your new life."
The proposal. "I never agreed to marry you." Grace waves the marriage certificate in the air. Alexander sets the coffee on her hospital table and sits down calmly. "You were unconscious. Emergency circumstances required immediate action. So you decided to forge legal documents. The marriage isn't legally binding. It's temporary protection until we sort out your situation." Grace stares at him. This man jumped into the Thames to save a complete stranger, then somehow managed to create fake marriage documents overnight. Either he's incredibly kind or incredibly dangerous. "What do you want from me?" Alexander's gray eyes meet hers. "I need a wife for 6 months. You need a new identity and protection from whoever hurt you. We can help each other." "A wife? Why?" "My grandfather's will. I inherit Sterling Industries only if I'm married before my 35th birthday. That's in 6 months." Grace shakes her head. "This is insane." "Is it more insane than jumping off a bridge?" The words hit like a slap. Grace looks away, ashamed. "I'm sorry," Alexander says quietly. "That was cruel." "No, you're right. I'm not exactly in a position to judge what's insane." Alexander leans forward. "Grace, I'm offering you protection, a new identity, and £2 million. In exchange, you attend a few social events as my wife. After 6 months, we divorce quietly, and you disappear with enough money to start over anywhere in the world." Grace tries to think clearly, but her head still feels fuzzy from the medication. "What about Marcus?" "Who is Marcus?" My fiancé, the man who was chasing me on the bridge." Alexander's expression hardens. "Tell me about him." Grace touches the bruise on her cheek without thinking. "Marcus Whitmore. He owns several nightclubs in London. We were supposed to get married yesterday." "What happened?" Grace closes her eyes, remembering. "I found out what kind of man he really is. When I tried to leave, he said he belonged to me, that he'd never let me go." "Has he hurt you before?" Grace nods, unable to speak. Alexander stands up and walks to the window. His hands are clenched into fists. "He won't hurt you again," he says finally. "You don't understand. Marcus has money, connections. He'll find me." "Not if you're married to me. The Sterling name carries weight in this city."
A nurse enters to check Grace's vital signs. When she leaves, Alexander sits back down. I've already had my lawyers file paperwork. As far as the world knows, Grace Bennett died in a boating accident yesterday. Grace Sterling is a completely new person. Grace's heart pounds. You can't just erase someone's existence. I can and I did. Your old bank accounts, your old life, it's all gone. Marcus can't trace what doesn't exist. But my family has been told you're safe, but need time to recover from trauma. They think you're at a private clinic in Switzerland. Grace stares at him in shock. You thought of everything. I had to. When I make a decision, I follow through. The door bursts open. Grace's heart stops as Marcus storms into the room, his face red with fury. There you are, you little... He stops when he sees Alexander. Who the hell are you? Alexander stands slowly. Even sitting down, Grace can see he's taller than Marcus and broader through the shoulders. I'm her husband, Alexander says calmly. Husband? Grace, what kind of game are you playing? It's not a game, Grace whispers. You were supposed to marry me yesterday. You can't just run off and marry some random stranger. I can do whatever I want. Marcus takes a step toward the bed, but Alexander moves to block him. I think you should leave, Alexander says. I'm not going anywhere without my fiancée. She is not your fiancée. She is my wife. Marcus's face twists with rage. You have no idea what you're getting into, mate. Grace belongs to me. Grace belongs to herself. The tension in the room is suffocating. Grace can see the violence in Marcus's eyes, the same look he had before he hit her. Security, Alexander calls out. Two large men in suits enter the room immediately. They must have been waiting in the hall. Escort Mr. Whitmore out of the building and make sure he understands he is not welcome back. Marcus points a finger at Grace. This isn't over. You can hide behind your new husband for now, but I know who you really are, and I'll be waiting when you get tired of playing dress-up. The security guards escort him out. Grace realizes she's shaking. He's right. I can't hide forever. Alexander sits on the edge of her bed and takes her hand. You're not hiding. You're starting over. What if he finds out the marriage is fake? Then we make it real enough that it doesn't matter. Grace looks into his gray eyes and sees determination that matches her own desperation. She thinks about Marcus's threats, about the bruises he left on her arms, and the terror she felt when he cornered her in the vestry. £2 million. Plus protection, a new identity, and a clean slate. And after 6 months, you disappear. New passport, new name if you want it. You can go anywhere in the world. Grace knows she doesn't have a choice. It's this or spend the rest of her life running from Marcus. What do I have to do? Alexander's smile is small but genuine. Convince the world that we're madly in love. Playing house. 3 days later, Grace stands in the entrance hall of Alexander's Mayfair mansion, clutching a single suitcase. The house is massive. White stone facade, black iron railings, and windows that stretch from floor to ceiling. It looks like something from a period drama. "Welcome home, Mrs. Sterling," says a kind-faced woman in her 60s. "I'm Mrs. Davies, the housekeeper." "Please, call me Grace." Mrs. Davies smiles warmly. "Let me show you to your rooms." They climb a grand staircase lined with oil paintings of stern-looking ancestors. Grace feels their painted eyes following her as she walks. "Mr. Sterling has given you the entire east wing. You'll have complete privacy." She opens a set of double doors to reveal a sitting room that's bigger than Grace's old flat. Beyond it, she can see a bedroom with a 4-poster bed and a bathroom with a marble tub. "This is all mine?" "Mr. Sterling was very specific. He said you should feel comfortable and safe." Grace sets down her suitcase and looks around. Everything is decorated in soft blues and whites, feminine but not frilly. Someone put thought into this. Where is Mr. Sterling? At the office. He works very long hours. You'll likely see him at dinner, if at all. Grace nods. Maybe that's for the best. The less time they spend together, the less complicated this arrangement becomes. Mrs. Davies, can I ask you something? Of course, dear. What was Mr. Sterling like before? I mean, has he ever been married? Mrs. Davies' expression grows sad. There was once a lovely girl named Emma, but that was years ago. What happened to her? It's not my place to say, but I will tell you this. Mr. Sterling hasn't brought a woman home since then. You're the first. That evening, Grace dresses carefully for dinner. Alexander's assistant delivered a wardrobe earlier, designer dresses, shoes, and accessories that fit perfectly. She wonders how he knew her size. She finds Alexander in the dining room, still wearing his suit from work. He looks tired. How was your first day? He asks as Mrs. Davies serves soup. Strange. I keep waiting for someone to tell me I don't belong here. You belong here as much as anyone. They eat in silence for a while. The dining room feels too big for just the two of them, with its long table and crystal chandelier. Tomorrow we start your transformation, Alexander says finally. My what? Etiquette lessons, shopping, styling. You need to look like someone who could catch the attention of Alexander Sterling. Grace sets down her spoon. What's wrong with how I look now? Nothing. But Grace Bennett wore high street clothes and worked as a shop assistant. Grace Sterling needs to look like she belongs in boardrooms and charity galas. I see. Alexander studies her face. I've offended you. No, you're right. I don't know how to be a billionaire's wife. It's mostly acting. Smile at the right people, say the right things, wear the right clothes. Sounds lonely. Something flickers in Alexander's eyes. It is. After dinner, Grace explores the house. It's beautiful, but cold, like a museum where someone happens to live. She finds Alexander's study on the ground floor and peeks inside. The room is lined with books and dominated by a massive desk. Family photos cover one wall. Alexander with an older man who must be his grandfather, Alexander at various business events, Alexander with a stunning blonde woman. That's Emma. Grace spins around. Alexander stands in the doorway, his tie loosened and his shirt sleeves rolled up. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snoop. It's your house now, too. Grace looks back at the photos of Emma. She's beautiful. She was. Was? Alexander walks to his desk and pours himself a whiskey. Emma died 3 years ago. Car accident. I'm so sorry. So am I. Grace notices he's looking at her strangely. What is it? You look like her. Not exactly, but similar enough. Grace's stomach drops. Is that why you married me? Because you remind me of her? Alexander drains his whiskey in one gulp. I married you because we both needed saving. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight. He walks past her toward the door. Alexander, wait. He stops but doesn't turn around. If this is going to work, we need to be honest with each other. No, we don't. We need to be convincing. There's a difference. He leaves her standing alone in his study, surrounded by photos of a dead woman who looks exactly like her. The next morning, Grace wakes to find Mrs. Davies setting out breakfast in her sitting room. Mr. Sterling left early for meetings. Your appointment with the stylist is at 10 a.m. The stylist turns out to be a sharp-eyed woman named Vivian, who looks at Grace up and down like she's evaluating livestock. Good bone structure, decent skin. We can work with this. Grace spends the morning being measured, photographed, and analyzed. Vivian declares her hair too long, her eyebrows too thick, and her wardrobe absolutely tragic. The goal, she explains while mixing hair color, is to make you look like you belong on Alexander Sterling's arm. Natural elegance, understated luxury. What if I don't want to look like someone else? Darling, you're being paid £2 million to look like someone else. Embrace it. By afternoon, Grace barely recognizes herself. Her hair is shorter and sleeker, her makeup subtle but polished. The new clothes fit like they were made for her body. When Alexander comes home for dinner, he stops in the doorway of the dining room. Christ, he breathes. Is it too much? He shakes his head slowly. You look perfect. Grace should feel complimented, but instead she feels hollow. Perfect for what? Perfect for pretending to be someone she's not? There's a charity gala tomorrow night, Alexander says as they eat. I'm terrified. You'll be fine. Just stay close to me and let me do the talking. What if someone asks how we met? We met at a gallery opening 6 months ago. Love at first sight. We had a small private ceremony because you're shy about publicity. Grace nods, trying to memorize the story. Alexander, what happens if people find out this is fake? They won't. But what if they do? Alexander sets down his fork and looks at her directly. Then we both lose everything.
Dangerous memories. The charity gala is held at the Natural History Museum. Grace stands beside Alexander in the grand entrance hall, surrounded by London's elite. Her new evening gown, midnight blue silk that cost more than she used to make in 6 months, feels like a costume. Remember, Alexander murmurs in her ear, we're madly in love. He places his hand on the small of her back, and Grace tries not to shiver. For the cameras, she tells herself. It's all for the cameras. Alexander! A silver-haired man approaches with a warm smile. And this must be the mysterious wife we've all heard about. Grace, meet Lord Pemberton. Charles, my wife Grace. Grace extends her hand, grateful for the etiquette lessons. Lovely to meet you. Enchanting, Lord Pemberton says, kissing her hand. You've certainly caught our Alexander by surprise. None of us even knew he was seeing anyone. I prefer to keep my private life private, Alexander replies smoothly. They move through the crowd, Alexander introducing Grace to a blur of faces and titles. She smiles and nods, trying to remember the backstory they rehearsed. Gallery opening, love at first sight, private ceremony. You're doing brilliantly, Alexander whispers when they have a moment alone. I feel like a fraud. You look like a queen. Before Grace can respond, a woman's voice cuts through the chatter. Alexander Sterling, how lovely to see you. Grace turns to see a stunning redhead approaching. She's tall and elegant, with the kind of confidence that comes from old money. Victoria, Alexander says coolly, I didn't know you were back in London. I couldn't miss the Henderson Foundation Gala, and I simply had to meet your bride. Victoria's smile doesn't reach her eyes as she looks Grace up and down. I'm Victoria Ashworth. Alexander and I are old friends. Grace extends her hand, but Victoria barely touches it. How did you two meet? Alexander has been quite the hermit since poor Emma died. Grace feels Alexander tense beside her. We met at a gallery opening, she says, sticking to the script. How romantic. Which gallery? Grace's mind goes blank. They hadn't rehearsed this level of detail. The Tate Modern, Alexander says smoothly. Grace was admiring the Rothko exhibition. How interesting.
I was at that exhibition opening. I don't remember seeing you. The conversation feels like a chess match, and Grace is losing badly. Perhaps you were focused on other things, Grace says with a sweet smile. Victoria's eyes flash with something that might be respect. Perhaps I was. A photographer approaches. Mr. Sterling, could we get a photo of you and your lovely wife? Alexander pulls Grace close, his arm around her waist. For the camera, she leans into him, placing her hand on his chest. His heart is beating fast. Beautiful couple, the photographer says, taking several shots. How about a kiss? Grace's breath catches. They haven't kissed since the fake ceremony at the hospital. Alexander looks down at her, and for a moment the noise of the party fades away. He cups her face gently and leans down. His lips brush hers softly at first, then more firmly when she doesn't pull away. The kiss is warm and gentle and completely unexpected. When they break apart, Grace feels dizzy. Perfect, the photographer says, moving on to his next target. Grace and Alexander stare at each other for a moment, both slightly breathless. That was for the camera, Alexander says quickly. Just for the camera. But something has shifted between them. The pretense feels less like acting and more like something dangerous. The rest of the evening passes in a blur. Grace meets more people than she can remember, eats tiny canapés that probably cost more than her old weekly salary, and watches Alexander work the room like the natural leader he is. You're good at this, she tells him during a quiet moment. Years of practice. My grandfather dragged me to these things from the time I was 12. That sounds lonely. It was, but it prepared me for this life. What about Emma? Did she enjoy these events? Alexander's expression closes off. Emma was different. She didn't need to enjoy them. She was born to them. What do you mean? Her family has money going back generations. She grew up attending these parties. For her, it was as natural as breathing. Grace looks around at the glittering crowd. And for me? For you, it's survival. Later that night, back at the mansion, Grace sits in her sitting room trying to process the evening. The kiss keeps replaying in her mind. It felt real in a way that terrified her. A soft knock interrupts her thoughts. Mrs. Davis enters with tea. You did wonderfully tonight, dear. I saw the photos online already. Online? Mrs. Davis shows her a tablet. The gossip sites are full of pictures from the gala, including several of Grace and Alexander. The headlines read, Sterling's Secret Wife Revealed, and Mystery Woman Captures Billionaire's Heart. You look radiant, dear, like you belong together. Grace studies the photos. In them, she and Alexander do look like a couple in love. His hand on her back, her smile up at him, the way they lean into each other, it all looks completely natural. Mrs. Davis, can I ask you about Emma? The older woman's expression grows sad. What would you like to know? What was she like? Beautiful, intelligent, kind. She adored Mr. Sterling, and he worshipped her. How did she die? Mrs. Davis hesitates. Car accident. She was driving to meet Mr. Sterling for dinner. It was raining, and she lost control on a curve. How awful. Mr. Sterling blamed himself, said if he hadn't asked her to come out in that weather, she'd still be alive. I understand now why he keeps everyone at arm's length. He's never gotten over it, has he? No, dear. I don't think he has. That night, Grace lies awake thinking about dead fiancés and fake marriages and kisses that feel too real. She's starting to realize that saving someone might be more complicated than she thought, especially when that someone might be falling in love with a ghost. Outside her window, London glitters like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there, Marcus is probably looking for her. But for the first time since she jumped from Westminster Bridge, Grace isn't thinking about her past. She's thinking about a man with gray eyes who kissed her like he meant it, and wondering if 6 months will be long enough to figure out what's real and what's just very convincing pretense.
The investigation. Grace wakes to find Alexander gone again, his third early morning this week. She's starting to wonder if he's avoiding her since the charity gala kiss. The thought bothers her more than it should. After breakfast, she decides to surprise him with lunch at his office. It will give her a chance to see him in his natural environment and maybe figure out why he's been so distant. Sterling Industries occupies an entire skyscraper in the financial district. Grace feels out of place in the gleaming lobby, despite her designer clothes. "I'm here to see Alexander Sterling," she tells the receptionist. "Do you have an appointment? I'm his wife." The young woman's eyes widen. "Oh, Mrs. Sterling, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you. Mr. Sterling is in a board meeting, but I'll wait," Grace says. "Don't interrupt him." She sits in the executive waiting area, watching Alexander's employees scurry past with tablets and folders. Everyone looks stressed and important. "Mrs. Sterling?" Grace turns to see a tall man with kind eyes and graying temples. "I'm James Crawford, head of acquisitions. I just wanted to introduce myself." "Nice to meet you." James sits down beside her. "How are you settling into married life?" "It's been an adjustment." "I imagine so. Alexander is a complex man." Something in his tone makes Grace look at him more carefully. "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing negative. It's just that he's very driven, single-minded when he wants something." "That's not necessarily a bad thing." "No, of course not. It's what makes him successful." James pauses. "I just hope he's learned from past mistakes." Before Grace can ask what he means, Alexander appears in the corridor. His expression darkens when he sees James talking to her. "Crawford, I wasn't expecting you until the 3 o'clock meeting." "I was just introducing myself to your lovely wife." Alexander moves to Grace's side, his hand finding her elbow. "Grace, what are you doing here?" "I brought you lunch." She holds up a bag from his favorite restaurant. "I thought you might be hungry." His expression softens slightly. "That's thoughtful. Why don't we eat in my office?" As they walk away, Grace glances back to see James watching them with a troubled expression. Alexander's office is enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames. Grace can see Westminster Bridge in the distance, the place where her old life ended. "Nice view," she says. "I like to keep an eye on the city." They eat lunch at his conference table. Alexander seems distracted, checking his phone every few minutes. "Is everything all right?" Grace asks. "Just work, the usual fires to put out." "What kind of fires?" Alexander hesitates. "Hostile takeover attempts, union disputes, the occasional corporate espionage." "Corporate espionage? That sounds dramatic." "This business can be cutthroat. Companies will do anything to get an edge." Grace thinks about James Crawford's cryptic comments. "Alexander, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What did James mean about learning from past mistakes?" Alexander's fork freezes halfway to his mouth. "What exactly did he say?" "Not much, just that you're driven and single-minded, and he hoped you'd learned from the past. James talks too much." "What past mistakes?" Alexander sets down his fork and looks out the window. "Everyone makes mistakes in business, Grace. The trick is not repeating them." It's not really an answer, but before Grace can press further, Alexander's phone buzzes. "I have to take this,"
he says, walking to his desk. Grace can't hear the conversation, but she can see Alexander's face growing darker by the minute. When he hangs up, he looks genuinely worried. "What's wrong?" "Nothing you need to worry about." "Alexander, Grace, I need you to go home, now." "Why?" "Please, just trust me." The urgency in his voice scares her. Grace gathers her things and kisses his cheek goodbye, a gesture that's becoming surprisingly natural. "Be careful," she whispers. "Always am." But as Grace leaves the building, she can't shake the feeling that Alexander is in more danger than he's letting on. That evening, Alexander doesn't come home for dinner. Grace eats alone, then wanders the house restlessly. She ends up in his study again, drawn to the photos of Emma. The blonde woman smiles out from every picture, at parties, on holidays, in quiet moments at home. She looks happy and carefree in a way Grace has never felt. You miss her. Grace turns to find Alexander in the doorway. He looks exhausted. It's all right. I come here to think about her too." Alexander pours himself a whiskey and sits in his desk chair. Grace notices his hands are shaking slightly. "Bad day?" "You could say that. Do you want to talk about it?" Alexander laughs bitterly. "Someone's trying to destroy my company, Grace. They've been digging into my past, looking for anything they can use against me." "What kind of things?" "Old business deals, personal relationships, Emma's death." Grace's blood runs cold. "What about Emma's death?" "The official report said mechanical failure. Brake lines snapped on a wet road. But some people think there was more to it." "What do you think?" Alexander drains his whiskey and looks out the window. "I think Emma would be alive if she'd never met me." "That's not your fault." "Isn't it? I was the one who asked her to come out that night. I was the one who bought her that car. I was the one who—" He stops, his jaw clenching. "Who what?" "Nothing. It doesn't matter now." But Grace can see it does matter. Whatever secret Alexander is carrying about Emma's death is eating him alive. "Alexander, whatever happened, you can tell me." He looks at her for a long moment, and Grace sees something vulnerable in his eyes. "Can I? Because the last woman I trusted with my secrets ended up dead." The words hit Grace like a physical blow. "You think Emma killed her?" "I think Emma got too close to something dangerous, and I think whoever's investigating me now knows it." Grace's mind races. "Is that why you married me? Not just for the inheritance, but for protection?" "Partly. A wife can't be forced to testify against her husband." Grace feels like she's been punched in the stomach. "So I'm not just a fake wife, I'm a fake wife with legal immunity?" "Grace, how long were you planning to wait before telling me I might be in danger?" Alexander stands up and moves towards her, but Grace backs away. "You're not in danger. I won't let anything happen to you." "Like you didn't let anything happen to Emma?" The words are cruel, and Grace regrets them immediately. Alexander's face goes white. "That's different." "How?" "Because I love you." The admission hangs in the air between them. Alexander looks as shocked as Grace feels. "What?" Alexander runs his hand through his hair. "I didn't mean to say that." "But you did say that." "Grace, this is complicated." "No, it's not. Either you love me or you don't." Alexander looks at her helplessly. "I love you, and that terrifies me, because everyone I love gets hurt." Grace's heart is pounding. She wants to run to him, to tell him she loves him too, but she also wants to run away from this whole impossible situation. "Alexander," the sound of breaking glass interrupts her. Alexander immediately moves to the window. "Get down," he orders. "What's happening?" "Someone just threw a brick through the front window." Alexander's phone is already in his hand, calling security. Grace crouches behind the desk, her mind reeling. Someone knows who I am. Someone knows where I live. And suddenly, Grace realizes that marrying Alexander Sterling might have saved her from Marcus, but it's also put her in the crosshairs of something much more dangerous.
Breaking point. The next morning, Grace discovers her world has become a prison. Security guards patrol the grounds. Every window has been fitted with bulletproof glass overnight. And Alexander has assigned her a personal bodyguard, a stern woman named Sarah, who follows Grace everywhere. "This is ridiculous," Grace tells Alexander over breakfast. "I can't live like this." "It's temporary, until we figure out who's behind the threats." "What threats? You said it was just a brick through the window." Alexander exchanges a look with Sarah. "Show her." Sarah hands Grace a manila envelope. Inside are photographs. Grace leaving the house. Grace at the charity gala. Grace having lunch with Alexander. Someone has been watching her for weeks. The last photo makes her blood run cold. It's her old flat with a red X drawn over the door. "They know who I used to be," Grace whispers. "We think so. Marcus? Possibly. Or someone using Marcus to get to me." Grace stands up abruptly. "I need air." "Grace, you can't leave the house." "I can't stay trapped in here either." She storms out of the dining room, Alexander following close behind. In the entrance hall, Grace tries to open the front door, but it's locked. "Let me out!" "I can't do that." Grace whirls around to face him. "You can't keep me prisoner." "I'm trying to keep you alive." "This isn't living. This is exactly what I was running from with Marcus, someone controlling my every move." Alexander's face goes pale. "That's not what this is." "Isn't it? You decide where I go, what I wear, who I talk to. You've even given me a new name. How is this any different?" "Because I'm doing it to protect you, not control you." "The result is the same." Grace tries to push past him, but Alexander gently catches her wrist, not to hurt her, but to stop her from walking away. "Grace, please, just listen to me." "No, I'm done listening. I'm done being told what to do by men who think they know what's best for me." She yanks her arm free and runs upstairs to her room, locking the door behind her. For the first time since leaving the hospital, Grace breaks down completely. She cries for the life she lost, for the danger she's in, for the impossible situation of falling in love with a man who might be using her. Most of all, she cries because she's right back where she started, trapped by someone who claims to love her. An hour later, there's a soft knock on her door. "Grace, it's Mrs. Davies. May I come in?" Grace unlocks the door. Mrs. Davies enters with tea and biscuits, sitting on the edge of the bed like a mother comforting a child. "He's not Marcus," Mrs. Davies says gently. "How do you know about Marcus?" "Mr. Sterling told me everything. About the bridge, about why you ran, and about what that man did to you." Grace accepts the tea gratefully. "Then you understand why I can't live like this. I understand why you're scared, but I also understand why Mr. Sterling is scared. He's not scared, he's controlling." Mrs. Davies is quiet for a moment. "Did he ever tell you about Emma's last day?" Grace shakes her head. "She came to see me that morning, said she was worried about Alexander's business dealings, that she'd discovered something that frightened her. What kind of something? She wouldn't say, but she was going to confront Alexander about it that night. She never made it to dinner." Grace sets down her teacup. "You think someone killed her to keep her quiet. I think Emma died because Alexander couldn't protect her, and I think the guilt is killing him." Mrs. Davies stands to leave, then pauses at the door. "He's not trying to control you, dear.
He's trying not to lose you the way he lost her. That evening, Grace finds Alexander in his study, staring at Emma's photos. He looks like he hasn't slept in days. "I've been thinking about what you said." "Which part?" "About everyone you love getting hurt." Alexander doesn't look away from the photos. "It's true." "Maybe. Or maybe you're so afraid of losing people that you push them away first." "Is that what I'm doing to you?" "I don't know. Are you?" Alexander finally turns to look at her. His gray eyes are full of pain. "I can't lose you, Grace. I can't go through that again." "So you'd rather keep me locked up than risk letting me live?" "If that's what it takes to keep you safe, yes." "That's not love, Alexander. That's fear." "What's the difference?" "Love trusts. Fear controls." Alexander stands up and walks to the window. "Emma trusted me. Look how that turned out." "Emma died in an accident." "Did she? Or did she die because I was too arrogant to see the danger?" Grace joins him at the window. "What really happened that night?" Alexander's quiet for so long that Grace thinks he won't answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he tells her, "Emma found documents in my safe, financial records that showed I'd been laundering money for some very dangerous people." Grace's stomach drops. "You what?" "Was. I stopped years ago, but the evidence was still there. Emma threatened to go to the police." "So you killed her?" The accusation hangs in the air like poison. Alexander turns to face her, and Grace sees something die in his eyes. "No, but I might as well have. I let her leave that night knowing she was angry, knowing she might do something reckless. I chose my reputation over her safety." Grace doesn't know what to say. The man she's falling in love with has just confessed to being everything she was trying to escape from. "I need time to think," she whispers. "Grace, please, just give me some space." Grace leaves him standing alone in his study, surrounded by photos of his dead fiancé and the weight of his secrets. That night, she lies awake staring at the ceiling. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees Marcus's face, then Alexander's, then Emma's from the photographs. All the people who've been hurt by the men in their lives. Around midnight, Grace makes a decision. She gets dressed quietly and slips out of her room. The security system is complex, but Mrs. Davies showed her the staff entrance days ago. She makes it to the garden before Alexander finds her. "Going somewhere?" Grace turns to find him standing in the shadow of an oak tree. He's fully dressed, as if he's been waiting for her. "I can't stay here." "Because of what I told you?" "Because I'm turning into someone I don't recognize, someone who accepts being controlled because the cage is prettier than the last one." "So you're running again?" "I'm choosing. There's a difference." "Is there? Because it looks the same from here." Grace feels tears stinging her eyes. "I thought you were different, Alexander. I thought you were saving me." "I was trying to." "By keeping me prisoner?" "By keeping you alive." His voice breaks on the last word, and Grace sees the truth. Alexander isn't trying to control her. He's terrified of losing her, the same way he lost Emma. "I'm not Emma," Grace says softly. "I know." "Then trust me to make my own choices, even if they're mistakes." Alexander looks at her for a long moment. Then he reaches into his pocket and pulls out her passport, her real passport, with her real name. "If you want to leave, I won't stop you." Grace takes the passport with shaking hands. "You're letting me go?" "I'm letting you choose." They stand in the garden, two broken people who found each other at the worst possible time. Grace knows she could walk away right now, disappear into the night and never look back. Instead, she takes a step toward him. "I choose you," she whispers, "but not like this, with lies and secrets and bulletproof glass." "Then how?" "With trust, real trust." Alexander reaches for her hand. I don't know how to do that anymore. Then we'll learn together. Grace takes another step closer until she's close enough to touch his face. No more secrets? No more secrets. No more controlling my life? I'll try. And no more keeping me in a cage, even if it's made of gold? That's the hardest promise to make. But you'll make it? For you, I'll try. Grace rises on her tiptoes and kisses him. This time, it's not for cameras or contracts or fake marriages. It's real and messy and full of all the fear and hope that comes with choosing to love someone despite their flaws. When they break apart, Alexander rests his forehead against hers. I love you, he says again, and that terrifies me. I love you too, Grace whispers, and I'm not going anywhere. But as they stand together in the moonlight, neither of them sees the figure watching from the shadows beyond the garden wall. Someone is still hunting them, and Grace's choice to stay might have just put them both in more danger than either of them realizes.
The truth. Grace wakes up to find Alexander's side of the bed empty. After their conversation in the garden last night, she'd insisted they share a room. No more pretense, no more separate wings of the house. She finds him in the kitchen, making coffee, and looking like he hasn't slept. Bad dreams? She asks. Just thinking. Grace wraps her arms around his waist from behind. About what? About keeping my promises to you. Before Grace can respond, Alexander's phone buzzes. His expression darkens as he reads the message. What is it? James Crawford wants to meet. Says he has information about who's been watching us. An hour later, they meet James at a quiet cafe in Kensington. He looks nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. Thank you for coming, James says. Both of you. What's this about, James? Alexander asks. It's about Emma and what really happened the night she died. Grace feels Alexander tense beside her. Emma's death was an accident. No, it wasn't. James slides a manila folder across the table. I've been investigating for 3 years. Emma was murdered. Alexander's face goes white. That's impossible. Is it? You said yourself she discovered something dangerous. Grace opens the folder. Inside are photos of Emma's car, police reports, and what look like autopsy findings. The brake lines were cut, made to look like wear and tear, but the cut was clean, professional. Why are you telling us this now? Grace asks. Because whoever killed Emma is coming for both of you. Alexander stares at the photos. You've known this for 3 years and said nothing? I needed proof, and I needed to be sure you weren't involved. You thought I killed Emma? The police did. You had motive. She was threatening to expose your money laundering operation. Grace looks between the two men. Money laundering operation? James nods grimly. Alexander was cleaning money for the Kozlov crime family. Emma found out and was going to the authorities. I told you I stopped all that years ago, Alexander says. But the Kozlovs didn't forget. They couldn't risk Emma talking, so they eliminated her. Who are the Kozlovs? Grace asks. Russian organized crime. They don't forgive, and they don't forget. Alexander stands up abruptly. We need to leave, now. Alexander! Grace, we need to go. If James is right, we're sitting ducks here. But as they head for the door, Grace spots a familiar figure at a corner table. Marcus. He's not looking at them, but she knows he's there for her. That's Marcus, Grace whispers to Alexander. Alexander follows her gaze and swears under his breath. Back door, move. They slip through the kitchen, but as they emerge into the alley, 2 large men in dark suits block their path. Mr. Sterling, one of them says in a thick accent, Mr. Kozlov would like a word. Grace realizes with growing horror that they've walked into a trap.
James wasn't trying to help them, he was delivering them. "Run," whispers Alexander to Grace. "I'm not leaving you." "Grace." "No, we're in this together." The men motion them toward a black car waiting at the end of the alley. Grace's mind races, looking for an escape route. "The Kozlovs don't want to hurt you," the first man says. "They just want to talk." "Then why the dramatic kidnapping?" Alexander asks. "You haven't been returning phone calls." They're forced into the car. As they drive through London, Grace notices they're heading toward the docks, never a good sign in a kidnapping scenario. "Whatever this is, Grace has nothing to do with it," Alexander says. "Your wife has everything to do with it," the man replies. "She's the reason you're still breathing." Grace doesn't understand what he means, but Alexander clearly does. His face has gone ashen. They're taken to a warehouse by the Thames. Inside, a man in an expensive suit waits for them. He's older, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. "Alexander," he says in accented English, "you'll look well." "Dmitri." "And this must be the famous Mrs. Sterling." Dmitri studies Grace with interest. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more like Emma." The name hits the room like a bomb. Alexander steps protectively in front of Grace. "Leave her out of this." "I am afraid that is impossible. You see, your marriage has created a problem for us." "What kind of problem?" Dmitri walks to a table covered with photographs. Surveillance shots of Grace and Alexander, their wedding announcement, photos from the charity gala. "When you married this woman, you gave her access to your accounts, your properties, your business records. If something were to happen to you, she would inherit everything." Grace's stomach drops. "Including evidence of the money laundering?" "Very good, Mrs. Sterling. You're quick." Alexander's jaw clenches. "So what do you want?" "Originally, we wanted Emma eliminated because she threatened to expose our business relationship. Now we have a new problem. Your wife. Grace knows nothing about my past dealings. Perhaps, but she could learn, and unlike Emma, she has legal protection as your spouse." Grace realizes what Dmitri is saying. You can't force a wife to testify against her husband. "Exactly. Which means Mrs. Sterling could become a very expensive liability." "So you killed Emma to protect your secrets, and now you want to kill me for the same reason?" Dmitri smiles coldly. "I prefer to think of it as business maintenance." Alexander takes a step forward. "You'll have to go through me first." "That was always the plan." Dmitri nods to his men. One of them pulls out a gun. "Wait," Grace says desperately. "I have a proposition." "Grace, don't," Alexander warns. "What kind of proposition?" "A divorce. I give up all claim to Alexander's assets, and you let us both walk away." Dmitri considers this. "Interesting. But how do I know you won't change your mind later?" "Because I don't want any part of this world. I never did." Grace looks at Alexander, hoping he understands what she's doing. "Our marriage was a business arrangement, anyway. It served its purpose." "No," Alexander says quietly. "Grace, no. It's the only way." Dmitri seems amused by the drama playing out in front of him. "How romantic. True love sacrificing itself for survival." "Do we have a deal?" Grace asks. "Perhaps. But first you'll need to sign some documents, and I'll need assurance that you'll both keep quiet about our business relationship." "What kind of assurance?" Dmitri's smile turns predatory. "The kind that ensures your continued silence, forever." Grace realizes too late that they're not negotiating their freedom. They're negotiating the terms of their deaths. But before Dmitri can elaborate, the warehouse doors burst open. Armed police pour in, led by a familiar figure. "Armed police, everyone on the ground!" It's James Crawford, wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a gun. "You're under arrest," he tells Dmitri. As chaos erupts around them, Alexander pulls Grace behind a shipping container. "James is a cop?" she gasps. "Undercover. Has been for years, apparently." "You knew?" "I suspected. No one gets that much information about the Kozlovs without being on the inside." The arrest happens quickly, and Dmitri and his men are taken into custody, and James approaches Grace and Alexander. "Are you both all right?" "We've been better," Alexander says dryly. "James," Grace says, "what happens now?" Now Alexander testifies against the Kozlovs. They go to prison for a very long time, and you both get to live normal lives." Grace looks at Alexander. "Normal lives?" "If that's what you want," he says quietly. Grace realizes that for the first time since she met Alexander Sterling, they have a real choice. No inheritance clause, no fake marriage, no criminal organizations threatening their lives. They can be together because they want to be, not because they need to be. "Alexander," she says, taking his hand, "ask me again." "Ask me what?" "To marry you, for real this time." Alexander's gray eyes search her face. "Grace Bennett, will you marry me? Not for money or protection or convenience, but because I love you and can't imagine my life without you?" Grace smiles through her tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As they kiss in the middle of a crime scene, surrounded by police and evidence of a life they're leaving behind, Grace realizes that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what really matters. And what matters is this: finding someone worth fighting for, worth staying for, worth building a real life with, even if that life starts in the most unlikely places.
Corporate warfare. 2 weeks later, Grace stands in the hallway outside a London courtroom, adjusting Alexander's tie for the 100th time. "You look fine," she tells him. "I look like a man about to testify against the Russian mafia. You look like a man doing the right thing." Alexander's testimony against the Kozlovs has been front-page news for days. The business world is watching to see if Sterling Industries will survive the scandal of its CEO's criminal past. "Mr. Sterling," a young lawyer approaches, "the Crown Prosecution Service is ready for you." Alexander takes Grace's hand. "Promise me something." "What?" "If this goes badly, if I end up in prison—" "You won't. But if I do, promise me you'll move on. Find someone who can give you the life you deserve." Grace cups his face in her hands. "Alexander Sterling, you saved my life. I'm not abandoning you now." "Even if I lose everything?" "Especially then." Alexander testifies for 3 hours. Grace watches from the gallery as he calmly details his business relationship with the Kozlovs, his attempts to extricate himself from their operations, and Emma's discovery of the truth. "Ms. Walsh found documents in your safe?" the prosecutor asks. "She did. Financial records that showed money transfers to shell companies controlled by the Kozlov organization." "And what was her reaction?" "She was horrified. Threatened to go to the police." "Did you try to stop her?" Alexander's voice breaks slightly. "I should have. Instead, I let her leave that night, knowing she was angry and upset. Knowing she might expose your criminal activities. Knowing she might get herself killed for having a conscience." Grace wipes away tears as Alexander continues his testimony. He's not just confessing to money laundering. He's accepting responsibility for Emma's death in a way that's both heartbreaking and healing. When court adjourns for the day, Grace meets Alexander outside. "How do you feel?" she asks. "Like I can breathe for the first time in 3 years." They're walking to their car when a reporter shoves a microphone in Alexander's face. "Mr. Sterling, is it true that Sterling Industries is filing for bankruptcy?" Alexander stops walking. "Where did you hear that?" "Sources close to the board of directors say they're preparing to vote you out as CEO." Grace feels Alexander's hand tighten on hers.
No comment. But as they drive home, Alexander's phone rings constantly. By the time they reach the house, the news is everywhere. Sterling Industries board has called an emergency meeting to discuss Alexander's future with the company. "They can't fire you," Grace says as they sit in the study. "You built that company." "I also nearly destroyed it. The board has a fiduciary duty to the shareholders." "So what happens?" "Tomorrow morning, I face a room of people who trusted me and explain why they shouldn't throw me out on the street." That night, Grace finds Alexander in the garden, staring up at the stars. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I'm thinking about my grandfather. He started Sterling Industries with nothing but ambition and integrity." "You have both those things." "Do I? Because I feel like I've spent the last 10 years proving I'm exactly the kind of man he hoped I'd never become." Grace sits beside him on the garden bench. "People make mistakes, Alexander. What matters is what you do next. What if next is unemployment and possible prison time? Then we'll figure it out together." Alexander looks at her in wonder. "How can you be so calm about this?" "Because I've lost everything before. It's not the end of the world." "But you deserve better than a disgraced ex-CEO with a criminal record." Grace takes his hand. "I deserve you, all of you, the good, the bad, and the complicated." The next morning, they arrive at Sterling Industries to find reporters camped outside. The board meeting is set for 10 o'clock. Alexander looks pale but determined as they ride the elevator to the top floor. "Whatever happens," Grace says, "I'm proud of you." The boardroom is packed. Grace recognizes several faces from the charity gala, people who treated her like royalty when they thought she was married to a respectable billionaire. "Ladies and gentlemen," the board chairman begins, "we're here to discuss the future of Alexander Sterling as CEO of this company." For the next hour, Grace watches as Alexander's life's work is dissected. Board members express concern about the company's reputation, its stock price, its ability to attract new business. "Mr. Sterling," the chairman says finally, "would you like to address the board?" Alexander stands up. He looks around the room at faces he's known for years, some sympathetic, others coldly professional. "10 years ago, my grandfather left me this company with one instruction: build something that lasts. I thought that meant making money, acquiring competitors, expanding into new markets." He pauses, his eyes finding Grace in the gallery. "I was wrong. Building something that lasts means building something you can be proud of, something that reflects your values, not just your ambitions." "Are you saying you're not proud of Sterling Industries?" one board member asks. "I'm saying I'm not proud of how I've run it. I made choices that put profits over principles. I got involved with people who operate outside the law. And when someone I loved tried to hold me accountable, I prioritized my reputation over her safety." Grace can hear murmurs throughout the room. "But I'm here today not to make excuses, but to take responsibility and to ask for a chance to rebuild this company the right way." "The shareholders have lost confidence in your leadership," another board member says. "Then let me earn it back." The chairman looks around the room. "We'll need to vote." The vote is close, closer than Grace expected. But in the end, the board decides to retain Alexander as CEO with conditions: external oversight, regular audits, and a commitment to complete transparency in all business dealings. As they leave the building, Grace can see the relief on Alexander's face. "So what now?" she asks. "Now we go home and plan a real wedding." "Is that a proposal?" Alexander stops walking and gets down on one knee right there on the sidewalk outside his office building. Cameras flash as he pulls out a ring box. "Grace Bennett, you've seen me at my worst and somehow decided I was worth saving. Will you marry me for real this time? No contracts, no fake certificates, just us and whatever future we can build together." Grace looks down at the man who pulled her from the Thames, who gave her a new life, who's now offering her his whole heart. "Yes," she says, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, yes, yes." As they kiss in front of the cameras, Grace realizes that sometimes the best love stories start with someone jumping off a bridge and someone else jumping in after them. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you both learn to fly.
The sacrifice. 6 months later, Grace stands in a small church in the Cotswolds, wearing a simple white dress that she chose herself. No designer gowns, no photographers, no guest list full of people she's never met. Just Alexander, Mrs. Davies, James Crawford, and Grace's sister Sarah, who flew in from Edinburgh with tears in her eyes and 1,000 questions about Grace's dramatic new life. "I can't believe you're actually doing this," Sarah whispers as she adjusts Grace's veil. "Which part? Marrying a billionaire or marrying him in a church that seats 20 people?" "Both. The Grace I know would have run away by now." Grace looks at herself in the small mirror. Maybe I did run away. Maybe this is where I ended up. The ceremony is simple and perfect. Alexander's voice shakes when he says his vows. Grace cries when he promises to love her in sickness and in health, in poverty and in wealth, for better or for worse. "I think we've covered the for worse part," she whispers, making him laugh. When the vicar pronounces them husband and wife, their kiss is soft and full of promise. As they walk back down the aisle together, Grace feels like she's finally coming home. The reception is held in the church garden. Mrs. Davies has outdone herself with a cake that's beautiful but not ostentatious. James gives a speech about second chances. Sarah tells embarrassing stories about Grace's childhood. "Happy?" Alexander asks, as they sway to music from a single violin player. "Completely." "No regrets about the small wedding?" "Are you kidding? This is perfect." Alexander spins her around and Grace laughs with pure joy. For the first time in her life, she feels like she's exactly where she belongs. "Mrs. Sterling?" Grace turns to see a young reporter approaching. Her heart sinks. Even here, they can't escape the media attention. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to let you know that your story has inspired a lot of people." "What do you mean?" "The foundation you and Mr. Sterling started for domestic violence survivors. The applications are pouring in." Grace looks at Alexander in surprise. "What foundation?" Alexander's cheeks redden slightly. "I may have made a donation in your honor to fund housing and legal aid for women leaving abusive relationships." "Alexander." "It seemed appropriate. You saved my life. Maybe we can help save others." Grace kisses him right there in front of everyone. "I love you." "I love you too, Mrs. Sterling." As the sun sets over the Cotswolds, Grace and Alexander drive away from their wedding in his car. No limo, no grand gestures, just a man and woman starting their real life together. "Where are we going for our honeymoon?" Grace asks. "Wherever you want." "I want to go home." Home it is. They spend their wedding night in the Mayfair house, which somehow feels completely different now. Grace has redecorated Alexander's study, replacing Emma's photos with pictures of their own life together. The ghosts are finally at rest. "No more secrets," Grace says as they lie in bed together. "No more secrets," Alexander agrees. "No more dangerous business deals. Sterling Industries is completely legitimate now. James made sure of that. And no more keeping me locked up for my own protection. I'll pull you closer. That might be the hardest promise to keep. Try anyway.
For you, I'll try anything. They wake up the next morning to find Mrs. Davies making breakfast and humming. She's been happier since Grace and Alexander's real relationship began, as if she can finally stop worrying about them both. Any regrets? Alexander asks over coffee. About what? Marrying a man with more baggage than Heathrow Airport? Grace considers this seriously. I regret that it took me so long to realize that baggage doesn't define a person. How they handle it does. And how am I handling mine? Better every day. Alexander's phone buzzes with a text message. He frowns as he reads it. What is it? Dmitry Kozlov's trial starts next week. The prosecutor wants me to testify again. Grace takes his hand. Are you ready for that? I think so. It's the last piece, isn't it? The last secret that needs to come out. Then we'll get through it together. The trial makes headlines for weeks. Alexander's testimony helps convict Dmitry and his associates on charges ranging from money laundering to murder. Emma finally gets justice 3 years after her death. On the day the verdict is announced, Grace and Alexander visit Emma's grave together. Grace has never been there before, but she insisted on coming. I wanted to thank her, Grace tells Alexander as they stand at the headstone. Thank her for what? For loving you enough to try to save you from yourself, and for giving you the strength to let someone try again. Alexander places flowers on the grave, white roses, Emma's favorite. I think she would have liked you, he says quietly. I think I would have liked her too. As they walk away from the cemetery, Grace feels a weight lifting. The past is finally, truly in the past. So what now? She asks. Now we live. Really live. What does that look like? Alexander stops walking and turns to face her. I have no idea, and for the first time in my life, that doesn't scare me. Good, because I have some ideas. Such as? A real honeymoon, maybe somewhere warm where we can lie on a beach and do absolutely nothing. I like that idea. And when we get back, I want to expand the foundation, really make a difference. Done. And maybe, eventually, when we're ready, Grace hesitates. What? Maybe we could think about a family. Not now, but someday. Alexander's face lights up with a joy so pure it takes Grace's breath away. Really? Really. But first, we need to practice being married for a while. How long do you think we'll need? Oh, at least 50 or 60 years. I can work with that timeline. As they drive home through London, Grace watches the city she once tried to escape. The Thames flows beside them, the same river that nearly claimed her life and ended up giving her a new one. Do you ever wonder what happened if you hadn't jumped? Alexander asks, as if reading her thoughts. Every day. But then I remember that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what you're really made of. And what are you made of, Grace Sterling? I consider this as they pull into our driveway. What am I made of? Fear and hope and courage I didn't know I possessed. Love that's strong enough to trust again. Faith that's deep enough to build a future on. I'm made of the same thing you're made of. Second chances. Alexander takes her hand as they walk into their house, their real home, built on real love and real choices. Welcome home, Mrs. Sterling. It's good to be home, Mr. Sterling. And for the first time since she stood on Westminster Bridge in a torn wedding dress, Grace Bennet Sterling is exactly where she belongs.
New beginnings. 1 year later, Grace wakes up in a cottage by the sea. Through the bedroom window, she can see Alexander on the beach, teaching a group of children how to skip stones. His laughter carries on the morning breeze. They bought the cottage 6 months ago, a small place in Cornwall where they can escape the pressures of London. Alexander still runs Sterling Industries, but he's learned to delegate. Grace still runs the foundation, but she's learned to trust her staff. Most importantly, they've both learned to live in the present, instead of hiding from the past or fearing the future. "Mrs. Sterling," a young voice calls from downstairs, "are you awake?" Grace smiles as she gets out of bed. Lucy is 8 years old and has been staying with them for the weekend, one of the children helped by their foundation. Her mother is in a transition house, rebuilding her life after leaving an abusive marriage. "I'm awake, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, and Mr. Sterling is teaching us to make pancakes." Grace follows Lucy to the kitchen, where Alexander is indeed making pancakes, while 3 children give him contradictory advice about batter consistency. "You're supposed to add the eggs first," 9-year-old Tom insists. "No, milk first," argues his sister Emma, "then eggs." "Actually," says 6-year-old Jake, "I think you just throw everything in and hope for the best." Alexander catches Grace's eye and grins. "I'm going with Jake's method." They spend the morning on the beach. The children build sandcastles, while Grace and Alexander walk along the water's edge. "Happy?" Alexander asks. "Disgustingly so." "Good. I have news." "What kind of news?" Alexander stops walking and turns to face her. "James called this morning. The foundation has been approved for a major grant, enough to open 3 new safe houses." Grace throws her arms around his neck. "Alexander, that's wonderful!" "There's more. They want you to head up the national expansion." "Me?" "You." The board was unanimous. They said your personal experience combined with your management skills makes you the perfect candidate. Grace feels tears welling up. 3 years ago, she was working in a shop and trapped in an abusive relationship. Now she's being offered the chance to help women across the country. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you'll take the job that was made for you." "Yes," Grace laughs through her tears. "Yes, of course, yes." They're interrupted by shrieks of delight from the children. Lucy has found a perfect shell, which she immediately brings to Grace. "It's beautiful," Grace tells her. "It's for you, because you saved my mom." Grace's heart melts. "Your mom saved herself, sweetheart. I just helped a little." "Mr. Sterling says you're a hero." Grace looks at Alexander, who shrugs with a smile. "I may have mentioned that you're pretty amazing." That afternoon, they drive the children back to London. The transition house is a far cry from the mansion in Mayfair. Small rooms, shared spaces, basic furniture. But it's safe, and that makes it beautiful. Lucy's mother, Sarah, greets them at the door. She looks nothing like the broken woman who first came to the foundation 6 months ago. Her bruises have healed, her confidence has returned, and her smile is genuine. "How is the beach?" Sarah asks Lucy. "Amazing! Mr. and Mrs. Sterling taught me to swim." Grace and Alexander say their goodbyes and drive back to Mayfair. As they pull into their driveway, Grace notices a familiar car parked across the street. Her blood runs cold. "Alexander," she whispers. He follows her gaze and his jaw tightens. "Stay in the car." Marcus gets out of his car and approaches them. He looks older, thinner, but his eyes still hold the same cold calculation Grace remembers. "Hello, Grace." Alexander immediately moves between them. "You're not supposed to be here." "Restraining order expired last month. I'm not breaking any laws." "What do you want?" Grace asks, proud that her voice doesn't shake. "To congratulate you on your marriage and to make you an offer." "We're not interested," Alexander says. "Let me guess," Marcus continues, ignoring Alexander. "He's promised you everything. Love, security, a fairy tale ending. But fairy tales don't last, Grace. Men like him get bored, and when they do, you'll need somewhere to go." Grace steps forward, no longer hiding behind Alexander. "You're right about one thing, Marcus. Fairy tales don't last, but real love does, and I know the difference now." "Do you? Because last I heard, your husband has quite a history with dead fiancés." Alexander takes a step toward Marcus, but Grace catches his arm. "You're wrong about something else too, Marcus. I don't need somewhere to go. I'm already home." Marcus's confident mask slips slightly. "Grace, be reasonable. You know this won't last. Men like Sterling don't change. People change all the time. I did. Alexander did. Even you could if you wanted to. I don't need to change. I know what I want, and I get what I want. Not this time." Grace takes Alexander's hand and walks toward their front door. Marcus calls after them. "This isn't over, Grace." "Yes," Grace says without turning around. "It is." Inside the house, Alexander double-checks the security system while Grace makes tea with shaking hands. "Are you all right?" she asks. "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." "Really? Because you're trembling." Grace sets down the teapot and looks at Alexander. "I'm trembling because for the first time since I met Marcus, I wasn't afraid of him." "What were you?" "I was proud. I was proud of who I've become." Alexander pulls her into his arms. "I'm proud of you too." "Alexander, I want to tell you something." "What?" I take a deep breath, and I'm pregnant. Alexander goes completely still. "What?" "I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you tonight, but with Marcus showing up—" "You're pregnant?" Alexander's voice is barely a whisper. "Are you happy?" Instead of answering, Alexander lifts her off the ground and spins her around, laughing with pure joy. "Happy? Grace, I can't even—" "When?" 7 months, according to the doctor. Alexander sets her down gently, as if she might break. "Are you feeling all right? Do you need to sit down? Should I call a doctor?" Grace laughs. "I'm pregnant, not fragile." "Right, of course. We're having a baby." "We're having a baby." That evening, they sit in the garden where they had their first real conversation about trust and love. Grace leans against Alexander's chest, his hands resting protectively on her still flat stomach. "Scared?" Grace asks. "Terrified." "You?" "Same, but good scared." "How can scared be good?" "Because it means we know how precious this is, how much we have to lose." Alexander is quiet for a moment. "I want to be a good father." "You will be." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you saved me, and you'll save our child too, every day just by loving them." "What if I mess up?" "Then we'll fix it together. That's what families do." Alexander kisses her forehead. "I love you, Grace Sterling." "I love you too." As the stars come out over London, Grace thinks about the journey that brought her here, the terror and the pain, the desperation and the hope, the moment when someone dove into dark water to pull her to safety. She thinks about Emma, who died trying to save the man she loved, and about Marcus, who could never understand that love isn't about possession, and about Alexander, who learned to trust again despite every reason not to. "Grace? Thank you." "For what?" "For jumping off that bridge." Grace laughs softly. "Thank you for jumping in after me." "Always," Alexander murmurs against her hair. I'll always jump in after you." And as they sit together in their garden, planning a future they never thought possible, Grace knows that some love stories begin with an ending, but the best ones begin with someone deciding that you're worth saving, and that maybe, just maybe, you're worth saving yourself. Don't forget to rate this story and subscribe if you want more love stories like this one.